Hello everybody, Necromancy for Kids here once again, this time with a video that's a bit different from my other ones, but one that I've wanted to discuss for a very long time, especially because I encounter situations where I want to talk about this so many times throughout my time playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially in Go format, which is the subject of casual players. And quite personally, I consider myself a casual player, and I think that the majority of people are casual players. And in fact, I can't say for Yu-Gi-Oh!, but I did see that for Magic the Gathering that they stated that less than 10% of their players have ever been in a sanctioned tournament. And so I would say that the majority of players in Magic the Gathering, and considering that's a really huge game, probably majority of players of most card games are technically casual players, at least in the sense that they don't play tournaments. Now, of course, there are different levels of being casual or competitive, and I'll get to that in a moment, but I want to say first, as I'm talking about this, that it's also okay for someone to be a competitive player or a casual player. And being a casual or competitive player doesn't mean good or bad player. You can be extremely competitive but really bad at the game. At the same time, you can be an extremely casual player but be really good at the game. It doesn't necessarily describe how well someone can play. More rather, it's describing the way that the player feels about the game and how they go about emotionally as they play the game. And of course, in addition to that, kind of how much time they play the game in some cases as well. In Magic the Gathering, there is this Timmy, Johnny, and Spike sort of profile for different kinds of players. And the Timmy player is the one who just likes making really big plays and playing strong cards. He has fun with the quality of his wins over how many times he actually wins. So as long as he feels like, oh man, I did something really fun and really cool, even if I only won like 2 out of 6 games, I'm still having a lot of fun. And then there's the Johnny player, which is usually the one that would be more described as a casual player, but the Timmy player also kind of can be in that juncture. Is the Johnny player wants to build a deck that expresses themselves and expresses the way they enjoy playing the game more than they do wanting to actually win the game. And if they they can also want to win the game, but they want to win on their own terms and show their own creativity as they're playing the game. And I think that that's kind of how I'm described, where I do like to win, and I do try to win, but at the same time, I want to be able to win using a deck that plays the way that I enjoy to play the game, and uses the cards that I enjoy to play. Then, of course, there is the Spike, who is considered mostly the competitive player. The player also described as a tournament player, someone who wants to win. They don't care sometimes how they win, obviously, besides doing like things like cheating. They just want to grind out, win, have the biggest win percentages, lose the least, do anything they can to win. And all of these different versions of playing the game are entirely valid. It doesn't matter, as long as you're not actively hurting people as you're playing the game, like constantly insulting the person or whatever, or saying, oh well, you like to you only play this kind of deck because you think it'll win, you suck. It doesn't matter how you play the game, as long as you're a good person and you're getting your own form of enjoyment. Some people enjoy doing grinds to win matches and make their percentages go up. Some people like to be like, okay, well, I won some games and I played the game, I spent my time doing it, and that's cool. So with that in mind, I wanted to move on to some points about being a casual player. As I stated earlier, I consider myself a casual player personally, even though I have participated in some GOAT format tournaments. And I did relatively decently in one of them, getting 9th place. One of them I was 3-2, although technically only 2-2 because one of those was a bye. But really, I only played those tournaments because I enjoyed it and I didn't actually even want the prizes. To be honest, my idea was if it's not a physical prize, like when they were doing the dice sets, I was just going to ask for it to be donated or to add it to the pool for the world tournament or whatever, because I don't play the game for money, and that's also why I don't enter tournaments that I have to pay for, because it's like, well, I'm not planning on winning money anyway, so I'm just doing it for fun. So I'm not gonna pay any money if I don't have to. And that's also a reason that I enjoy playing online so much, but that's a different tangent. I wanted to discuss some of the benefits that there is to being a casual player. And again, there are different forms of casual players, and not all of them are going to describe every casual player. And in addition to that, I want you to keep in mind that while I'm listing this and their benefits, the casual being a casual player is more of a mindset, and sometimes it is a means, because a casual player could be born not just from a wish to play casually, but also because, for instance, they don't have the money to invest in playing the game full on like some people can. Or maybe they don't have the time to play the game as much as some people do, so they're kind of forced to be like, well, I can't become the top player, so, I'll just play some games and enjoy them on my free time. With that said, let me start up with this. The very first point I wanted to make is that as a casual player, your ceiling for positive feelings is higher, and there is a higher floor of negative feelings as well. So you're going to possibly feel more positives, and you're going to have, when you do feel negative, it's going to be less hurtful to you. Sort of like you're going to be happier with the results that you get when you win or when you lose. Sometimes you'll be glad to have lost. Sometimes you'll be okay with having lost because you put up a good fight. Things like you could say, oh, I did pretty well for what my deck is, or they were using a really strong deck, so, it's okay that I lost. Or, wow, I really beat that powerful deck with my janky one. Amazing. And also, when you're facing other casual players, you can be actively happy about their victories too, like, wow, that Amazonas deck just beat me. Wow, I actually lost to a Dark Scorpion deck. That's really cool. I never saw anyone use those cards before. Nice. Also, you can completely avoid people who you have a bad experience with, unlike in a competitive ladder, because if you're just playing for fun, you're like, okay, well, hey you, do you want to play? Or, no, I don't really want to play you, sorry, because maybe the person was rude to you before. But if you're forced to play them in a tournament or on the competitive ladder, you either have to give up points to not play them, or you just have to make yourself miserable playing through it. The next point I wanted to make was that you have a wider variety of experiences. When you play more casually, you have a bigger toolbox to choose from in the card pool. Someone was kind of saying that like everyone uses from the same pool of like 60 to 100 cards when there's thousands of cards in the game, and that's relatively true, though not as true as they were trying to make it out to be. And when you're not as worried about winning, you'll worry less about playing cards that people don't play or that aren't necessarily proven to be good. Also, you get to create and witness more interactions that aren't normally seen because of that. Like, not everyone's going to be playing Amazon's Chainmaster, so, oh wow, I didn't think to set my monster before I attacked into their face down, because now they just stole it with Amazon's Chainmaster. Things like that. Casual players will be more likely to want to play against you when they know that you also are a casual player, because they know that it's not going to be as serious of a match, and likely not always, because everyone acts differently, but it's possible that you're going to be nicer during the match as well. But again, being casual or competitive doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good or bad person. But at least they know that they'll be matched against another casual player. Also, because you are playing cards that people might not have seen before, your opponents are more liable to be surprised by your deck and not know what to look out for, like the example that I just gave with Amazon's Chainmaster. Another really huge benefit that I see people complaining about a lot lately in the GOAT community is that there is less burnout when you play the game casually. A lot of people are like, oh, well, I played so much and I don't really feel like playing GOAT anymore. But when you play casually, there's less stress about whether you're doing good or not, meaning that you're more likely to feel well enough to keep playing the game. As well, you experience more aspects of the game, and your matches and cards played will be of a greater variety, so it doesn't feel like, oh, well, I'm just playing Recruiter Chaos over and over and over again. It's like, oh, well, I got to play this deck today, and I can play this deck tomorrow. Well, I'm not really feeling like playing this deck anymore, so I'll play this deck and that deck. Also, you're able to more easily take breaks and pick up the game whenever you feel like it, because you don't have to worry as much about getting rusty, because being rusty just means, oh, well, I have to play a couple extra games. Doesn't mean, oh, wow, I'm going to lose 100 points every day that I'm not playing, and if I try to play again, I'm going to lose to everybody because I'm not so good at the game. Things like that. And the final point that I wanted to bring up is that it can save you a lot of money, and you get to try more decks, kind of as I was explaining earlier. You don't need to buy the cards that everyone is demanding when you're playing a deck that isn't played nearly as much, or you're playing cards that are not as in demand. Like instead of playing Breaker, for example, you're playing something like Magical Marionette. Especially in like Go format, but this applies to most card games, even Magic the Gathering, that there will be staples which cost a lot, but you can invest in those and reuse them, or you might be able to even come up with a deck that completely doesn't require them. Like, not everybody needs to play duo in their decks, and in fact, in some decks, people might not want to play duo at all, like a burn deck or something like that. The less in-demand cards that you want to buy could be super cheap, like probably Magical Marionette as example is probably like 5 cents, because I don't think anyone really plays that. And yet, also at the same time, Alfei 2, I think that's how you pronounce it, I don't know, won recently a tournament using Magical Marionette, which is a card before I hadn't seen in like any competitive deck in Go format. And finally, I want to say that because you're paying less per deck, it means that you can afford to own more decks in total. So you get to enjoy those experiences with different decks more often. And you don't have to worry about like, well, I have to play this deck because it's the only cards that I own. You could buy, for instance, like 4 decks for the price of a regular one, like my Earth Beatdown deck. If you take out Duo, that deck is probably maybe even like $10 total. I didn't actually look it up, but I can imagine that it's super cheap. I have on here a deck that's also not competitive, but is built for fun, which is the E-Hero deck. I have over 62 GOAT decks, and I have decks for other formats like Hindsight format, Character deck format, which if anyone's interested in that, I can talk about at some point. But I just wanted to bring this up because there's so much stigma about being a casual player, I feel. Not everybody, but there's definitely some people that try to pressure people into not being casual players, and they have to play only to win, and pressure for everybody to be a spike, when the vast majority of players, at least 90% in Magic the Gathering, aren't really that kind of a player. Sure, people do want to win. Most people that play a game want to win the game, but they're going about it a different way and don't necessarily want to win every game. Hopefully this helped you guys realize that being a casual player is not really as bad as people make it out to believe, and that casual players are just players like everybody else, and to be respected by everybody else, just the same as you would respect someone who is a tournament player. Obviously, they aren't necessarily the person you want to go to for advice on how to win a tournament, but they are someone you could go to for ideas for decks and cards that you could play that maybe you haven't thought of before. Thank you very much, guys, and I hope you'll have a great one.